Hello and welcome to episode 375 of the Crate and Crowbar. It is the 9th of July 2021. My name is Chris Thurston and tonight I'm joined by Tom Senior.
Hello.
Hello Tom. It's been a while since we've done a pod, just you and I.
Feels like it's been ages. It feels like it's been ages since I've said anything to a microphone at all.
Yeah, indeed. I think it was last month. But
Actually.
It feels like ages since I've last said, what is time? But really it's minutes, maybe, or days. So who among us can really say? This is actually a surprisingly good segue to the first game we were going to talk about. Yeah. I was just thinking about this. We could drag this out longer, or we could talk about Deathloop, because they put out a big chunk of gameplay, I think somewhat overlapping with some previous footage that they'd shown of the game in a previous trailer.
It's most sort of comprehensive overview of what the thing is. It's sort of what I've been needing from the game for a while. It's just, this is how the game is structured, and this is what it looks like.
Yeah, this is what it is. Yeah. So Deathloop is Arcane Lyon's, as in the French half of Arcane's new game, which was revealed a few years ago. There's an extremely large seagull outside.
It sounds like a child. Skylight. It sounds like a human child.
Okay, it's actually a seagull child. I've had this problem lately. There's one nesting on the roof, like a few houses down on this terrace. And I'm sorry that NVIDIA RTX Voice is incapable of cancelling this human-sounding seagull child, because
this bird must be heard.
It's intelligent enough to know that's a child, and it is, but just not a human child, or B, relevant to this discussion of Arcane Lyon's Deathloop. I apologize for the seagull. It's probably not going to get better. Well, it will get better. It will be fine. I hope. I wish it a long life. I don't know why I chose to avoid upsetting a seagull. I've been completely firm about this, but yeah, Arcane's thing. Which they revealed a few years ago, and I think I forgot that I was excited about it until I watched this video, if that makes sense. I'm sorry. I'm gonna
ask it what it thinks about Deathloop.
Hang on, I have to stand up.
You
like Dishonored? Oh fuck me! There's a huge seagull. Like it's not the young one. It's its dad. It's literally staring down at me through my skylight from the chimney of next door's house. It's terrifying. I'm going to see if I can scare it off. This is the live radio that people came here for.
And this
piss off. It did.
Oh wow! It was obviously. I think it was trying to communicate something to you. There's some sort of omen there, Chris. So you might want to sort of like watch it back for the next few days.
Yeah. Well, I have seen the film The Lighthouse. This was a lot like that, but reflective of my actual capacity for conflict. Bad luck to tell a seabird to piss off, so Willem Dafoe once told me. So we'll see what fate will befall me and my many scrimshaws.
We've got it recorded on this. We have an audio recording.
We do. Thank God for wireless headphones. I'll say that. Speaking of scrimshaws, Dishonored. Dishonored looks a bit like this game because it's made by the same people and it's a bit like that. Sorry, my brain has now been completely taken over by suddenly making eye contact with a seagull. It looked into my soul, I looked into his, and here we are. So yeah, Tom, what did you think of the video? Help me save this podcast.
I thought it was. I really enjoyed the colours, which is the level of criticism you can expect from me throughout the evening today. It was lovely. I really like the idea of just having this really vibrant, and it kind of looks a bit kind of 60s colour palette.
It's got that kind of grindhouse sort of 70s vibe, but it's very much a vibe, so much more than a literal setting.
Yeah, and the idea of just brutally murdering loads of people I don't think it gave a reason why you had to go and kill all those people. You're hunting 7 or 8 people. You're an assassin and you have to take them down. And every time you die, you're reset to, I guess it's sort of like a load point, really. It seems like the kind of death and rebirth system is basically sort of save scumming, but within the context, like contained.
So there's two, right? So the broader context is it's Groundhog Day. Like when you die, or if the day ends, it resets to the start of the day. And then they also, I think for the first time in this, and that's the loop, right? That's the big Edge of Tomorrow loop. And then the other thing they showed in this is that, obviously, because it's got that kind of roguelite thing, or the roguelite thing, or even just the Outer Wilds, time loop thing. But the thing they showed in this video is that when you die, you have one of the powers you can earn effectively lets you rewind time a short distance, Prince of Persia style, which is the kind of thing I think you were describing. It's almost like sanctified save scumming with a limit.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. And yeah, there's tons of things I really liked about it. It really made me think of the sort of the side of Dishonored that really embraced, or the side of the Dishonored community that really embraced this kind of like these crazy trick shots and a very kind of action heavy play style, as opposed to the stealth thing. Which is not to say that the stealth thing isn't there, but you can really see Arcane's love of sort of interconnected or mutually interactive kind of gadgets and abilities and powers and things like that.
Yeah, lots of using telekinesis to levitate people, throw them across a battle arena, maybe throw a sticky bomb or something onto them first so they become a sort of mobile bomb that takes out all their friends. That kind of stuff, the sort of stuff that you totally saw people making videos of for Dishonored and Dishonored 2. It's actually sort of a game that encourages that sort of play. I can imagine there would be some really awesome games done quick style speedruns of this game that will just look amazing and be widely shared. It's also a kind of single player. It's more single player than I thought. I thought initially mistakenly that it was going to be a kind of online session game or something where you would drop you into a level and you could choose to face an assassin who is also hunting you. But it seems like it's actually a single player game. But sometimes the assassin that's hunting you will be played by a human player. And that seems dynamic depending on who's available to play that person, it seems.
Yeah, it's almost like a Dark Souls invasion, right?
Right, yeah.
Because that's the other thing that can end your run, is being killed by the assassin who has your powers, which just seems super cool. Like, I really liked all the pieces I described, but and it was nice as well that this video is narrated by Dingo Bakabo, who I think is a creative director on that game now. He was a senior designer, I believe, on Dishonored 2. I interviewed him when I went to Arcane and to see that game when it was revealed. And it's just a team is super invested in like a very particular vision for like how to design game worlds and how to create play spaces within them. And I didn't realize that it's been a while since that team did its thing, and it's really exciting to see them do it. And the fact that like they're adopting, so there's like quite a lot of loot, quite a lot of grabbing weapons and things, and then like there's it seems to be like an upgrade currency or something that you can acquire that allows you to like save certain guns between runs, for example. So sort of this roguelite kind of progression thing, but that combined with like using the Outer Wilds structure of you go and you try something and you fail and you go back to the beginning and you reset, and applying that to functionally like a Dishonored or a Hitman game seems like awesome to me. Like, it seems like such a great combination of things. Like, time loop Hitman is such a good pitch.
Yeah, it's super smart actually. It's probably the game I'm most looking forward to this year after that trailer. Up there, probably maybe equal with Battlefield, but I'm definitely going to pick it up. I can't say that about much else.
No, it's like I think we know. I think the last time we spoke about games was coming out of E3, right? And I think a lot of the stuff that jumped me out of E3 was like E3 was fun to the extent that it got me excited about a whole bunch of games, including actually, I'll be fair, Arcane's other thing. But a lot of the games that I kind of came away with a really tangible sense of like, yeah, I'll play that, were very much kind of like old familiar things, right? Battlefield, Halo, etc. And this feels like something that like I have a good feeling about. Like, I have a good feeling that it will surprise me, which is something nice to look forward to.
Really is.
Did you watch the trailer for the Death Stranding director's cut?
No, I didn't.
Because it's fucking mental.
How much more crazy could it be than the original?
Well, so there's like, you kind of get, okay, cool, they've added a cannon, fine. That you can fire cargo out of. They've added a ramp for doing sick jumps. There's like a robot, which is a bit like a two-legged version of the Boston Dynamics Big Dog thing. Cool. And it makes a kind of yodeling, whooping sound as it runs around. It doesn't make any fucking sense. And then I was like, okay, fine. This is all fairly logical, like, just Death Stranding expansion pack stuff. And then at the end, it's just like Léa Seydoux Kart Racing.
What?
You heard me.
But so you could drive stuff in the original game. There wasn't a huge amount of course to, because you had to build roads to be really that effective. So
Kart racing.
Kart racing.
Kart racing with tracks and times and kart racing. Like, imagine the interface for a kart racing game where you pick the kart racing track, right? That.
Why? I was about to.
And you appear to be racing exclusively against Léa Seydoux.
Okay. Kind of into
Fuck
that.
it.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds.
I mean,
sure. Why not?
Yeah. All right. Okay. I mean, I think I don't think any of these things is sufficient to kind of reignite my enthusiasm for it after I drifted away from it originally. And I drifted away from it the moment I lost a fight and had to redo anything.
Yeah, fair.
Because that's maybe just where I was at.
I want to go back in, actually.
Yeah.
I've just realised I do want to go back in.
All it took was kart racing.
All it took was kart racing, but also I'd like to play it on PC. Just because it is a gorgeous game. It's really beautiful and sort of mournful. I feel like I could get good kind of little 40-minute sessions with Death Stranding on PC, where occasionally, this familiar experience of hiking through Iceland is occasionally broken up by a kart race. I could see space for my life for that. So I'm curious. Also, there might be loads of fun kind of Kojima Easter eggs and things in there that might be quite funny.
I'm sure there will be. I suspect the kart racing, this is my guess, this is a complete guess, but I suspect it's going to be some kind of like virtual reality thing you do from your bedroom in, the bunker from which you deliver your parcels or whatever, right? And I can imagine really viscerally the feeling of having just spent 3 hours on the couch doing Léa Seydoux's kart racing and then logging out of that in the game to check my in-game emails, i.e. procrastinating from doing my in-game delivery job and then switching the game off for another year. I can completely 100% imagine that. I'm glad weird shit like this exists, but I don't know if I will have the time.
You just know that it's going to tie into the whole kind of like system in the game as well, isn't it? You win a race, get some extra likes, build up your reputation, not just as a carrier saving the world and reuniting humanity strand by strand, but also you're fucking fast around a corner. People love it.
Yeah, I mean, and I am really aware of someone who bounced off Death Stranding a bit, and I'm aware that people do love it, that I might be missing something, and that maybe kart racing is of much deeper significance to the story than I was aware because I didn't finish it, so I want to hang the caveat off it, like before obviously people get upset. If the answer all along was like kart racing is what will reunite America, then A, I believe that, and yes. B, I'm sorry.
That's a must buy now for me. Good. That's my Christmas sorted then. Bit of Deathloop.
Yeah. So yeah, it's called something like Fragile Kart or something like that. It pops up because isn't her name Fragile? Her character.
It is. Guess why?
Cool. Fuck's sake. Good. We should talk about some games we've been playing, maybe, unless there's any other news. I don't think
no, that sounds good to me.
Yeah.
What have you been playing, Chris?
I played two things, so maybe I can talk about the first one. So, sure. I will. The first one is going to be something I played that has that I'm aware has been sort of floating around for a while, and I hadn't heard about it until recently, and then I sort of discovered it and went back in sort of in time through articles going back to 2016 about this really, really fascinating indie horror driving game. Effectively, imagine the PT of European Truck Simulator.
Oh, that's a
game called Beware. Have you heard of this?
No, not really, actually.
It's so much up the various alleys of people on this pod that I'm actually surprised that we missed it and a little bit ashamed. But basically, it's a one-man project as far as I'm aware, or at least it's led by a guy called Andres Svadlena. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Who initially started building the game. I think he also is a filmmaker and things like this. He started building the game out of kind of curiosity and interest in driving games, but also specifically to try and recreate the experience of fleeing communist Czechoslovakia and being pursued by the secret police, effectively. And it has evolved over time. There's currently, it's not out yet, and I think he has said that it will be out until 2022. But there's a free demo that is available, and the game just got a new trailer, and it was a new trailer that I became aware of, and then I ended up digging back and finding the demo. And so what it is a atmospheric driving game where you are driving a sort of battered old car in the darkest of night through kind of European countryside. And it has there's no UI or anything like that. It's just dashboard light, first person driving in the dark. You can switch the wipers on, you can switch the lamps on. It's absolutely phenomenally atmospheric, and something that will leap out the moment you even see any footage of it. Absolutely, like the actual assets of the game are fairly rudimentary, but there's just incredible use of lighting, color, sound, and like sort of effects. Effectively, diffuse lighting, the way light reflects through the windscreen against the surface of a wet road, the way that you rely on your rear view mirror to see things behind you, and the way that that limits your vision. All of this stuff makes it like incredibly evocative and claustrophobic. Like there is, as you know, I think is a fairly shared experience. Like driving at night is a fairly hypnotic thing, right? Like it can be very dreamlike and hypnotic anyway.
Yeah.
And the way that it combines that with it's like it takes the experience of driving through the countryside at night, and then that little, you know, fortunately for me at least, the sort of the imaginative. This has always been an imaginative thing. That brain one of like, what if that car behind us really was following us? And that little sort of way you can spook yourself out, kind of creep yourself out with those thoughts. It kind of takes that paranoia and kind of runs with it in really interesting.
That's a
ways.
Fantastic idea for a game.
It's so good. Like it's car horror, which is so
that
cool.
is a genre though.
Right. And where it actually fits as a game, it reminds me of a few things. Actually, its aesthetic level, raises. It's quite a large open world space that you learn to navigate. There's no map or anything else. It's very much easy to get lost. And really, the extent of the demo is a sort of phase by phase mystery or a series of experiences, essentially, that do stitch together. There is a way to finish it. It doesn't necessarily feel that way. Most of the time, it will end when something bad happens to you, and the screen goes black, and just a tiny text in the center of the screen says "death," and that's it. That's what it ends in. That's not really a spoiler. It's just about, and I think I had a dual experience of it. I played it a bunch. Just loved the way it felt. Didn't necessarily find myself understanding it very well, finding things I didn't understand how they fit together or how to progress. And I think there's probably a lot of mileage in digging into the mystery of that and trying to solve it. But then what I did is the developers actually put a full walkthrough of the demo on YouTube with no commentary, just him playing through it. And so I ended up watching that just to see how it fits together, just to make sure that I understood kind of what it was doing. And it is ultimately a very simple kind of, step by step progression through the maps, a series of actions you can do in a certain order that unlock things. But the way that is accompanied by moments of kind of fear and escalation, and the music is amazing as well. Like it's really, really super cool. Notes, the things it reminded me of, in a way, it has the same bones, just structurally, as something like those really old Slenderman games. Where really it was just an open world, usually low res, a pretty shitty forest, and maybe there's a spooky man in it, and you've got to run between 4 spots before the spooky man goes blah. Right? Yeah. That's really its bones, but it achieves so much with that, like just in terms of your kind of atmosphere. And the other thing it reminded me of a little bit, because of its focus on like countryside horror, is So You're Being Hunted. Even though the aesthetic is completely different, It has the same sort of sense of like searchlights across a moor, which is a very specific form of like rural spook. And so I would thoroughly recommend people check out the demo, because I can't really see a reason not to, or even just watch it on YouTube, because it does look and feel extraordinary. But the really nice thing is the trailer that you just put out shows kind of how far that concept has come since, and it makes me really excited for the game to come as well. Effectively, like the new trailer shows various areas from the game, and it's sort of branched out from countryside to these like incredibly hyper real or sort of exaggerated like post-Soviet industrial zones, and like rain swept what look like airfields, and like in the dark, and being hunted by just some scary fucking trucks that sort of pull onto the road from the side. Like in the demo, you do get chased, and it's kind of built itself as a bit of like a car chase game as well, which again I just sort of love as a concept, because having played Resi recently, and I'm so interested in this kind of game anyway. Horror games struggle to manifest to really make a chase feel like a chase. and it's so interesting how taking mechanics from a completely different genre, in this case, the driving game or the driving action game, the GTA car chase, and applying that to a horror game, with very detailed physics and so on, is like, that's kind of brilliant, right? Like, if the thing you want to achieve is a scary chase and you can do scary, then taking your chase mechanics from a genre that's really good at it, and a setting and a medium that's really good for it, is really very clever. I really, really like it.
It's really smart. Have you ever seen Duel?
No.
Duel is 1971. It's sort of a horror film, basically. I think it's Spielberg, actually, one of Spielberg's earliest, and it is almost entirely without dialogue, and it's just a guy in America going between petrol stations who is just suddenly followed by this huge, ominous brown truck. And it's just always there behind him, and he's always kind of, at the first sort of he has that thing where he's glancing in his rearview mirror, and he thinks he might have sort of made eye contact with the driver at the last stop or something like that, or somehow maybe pissed this guy off. And initially you think, oh, he thinks he's being paranoid, but through the acting and through the way that this enormous, horrifying truck slowly behaves and closes in on him, you realise that, oh, this is actually a chase, and that the transition from that, the horror of that, it feels like it's just such a rich kind of untapped vein of taking this everyday occurrence of driving between places and being surrounded by people who are in control of killer vehicles and having to trust in the fact that your life is in their hands as much as it is in your own. I think that realizing something like that as an interactive experience is extremely worthwhile endeavor, actually. I can't think of many games that even come close to that. I know you've got stuff like Jalopy, but that seems to be more like a kind of familial adventure about a thing that breaks down all the time. And it's
right.
its own
Well,
thing.
I mean, that's interesting, because it's like Jalopy takes the notion of a driving game and then uses it as a storytelling medium, right? There's been a few games that have done that, and it feels like horror was just sort of lurking there as a really striking possibility. And like, man, it reminds me of, it has the kind of, I fucking love a lonely wasteland horror shot, right? And like that sense of space and the sort of like, like sort of driving on a lonely evening. And the other thing it reminded me of, I think it's because the soundtrack is really, really awesome, like sort of ambient sort of accompaniment that changes based on the scenario you find yourself in. It also reminded me of some of the sort of like landscape sort of driving sequences from Under the Skin. Have you seen that film?
Yeah,
like nothing like that in terms of what's actually happening, but something of that sort of road horror kind of feel, right? Where there's a journey kind of implicit in it. I just really loved it. I really, really like it. It's Beyond Beware. Sorry, is the name of the game.
Beware.
Awesome. Yeah,
kind of reminds me of
caps.
Again, I think it's sort of in a similar vein, obviously quite different tonally, not to be mixed up with Steven Spielberg's Duel. It's called Fuel, which is a racing game where you drive around. I think it's sort of North America, but it's a post-apocalyptic version of it where there are tornadoes and things, and you're largely alone, and occasionally involved in races, I think. But I remember reading lots of writers talk about it as a kind of, not meditative experience, but a kind of a better experience as a kind of being present in that landscape in a vehicle, and maybe even like the relatively recent Mad Max game, which is ostensibly just a very fairly rote third-person game where you drive around and then climb towers to sync with stuff and then brutalize people with a crowbar. But apparently the actual sort of driving in between places bit is its own kind of lovely experience. Not lovely, but I know it's very evocative about driving a vehicle across an empty landscape. Maybe Shadow of the Colossus, like those long horse riding sections between the actual colossi themselves, have really stuck with people. So anything that sort of taps into that, and then especially directed in a horror direction as well, sounds awesome. Beware.
Yeah, Beware. Like I say, demo's free. The creator has a Patreon, which I'm definitely gonna look into. And check out the trailer as well, because it's I just like saw it and I was immediately like, what the fuck is this? It's incredible. It's really, really impressive. What have you been playing, Tom?
I've been playing Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne Remastered. I think that's all the words in that title.
Is I think that's all the words in that title, like the final banner at the bottom of the title.
maybe the remastered director's cut version has added more.
Yeah.
This is Shin Megami Tensei series is a long-running JRPG series, which features strange, almost like Freudian demons that you end up both befriending and battling as normally kind of an ordinary citizen of the world thrown into an apocalyptic event. That's the kind of through line of Shin Megami Tensei series. I think a lot of players in the current moment will be more familiar with the Persona series, which is a spin-off of this. And the Persona games are designed to be more kind of cheerful and palatable, and basically trade on high school drama as a framework to actually put you in contact with these demons. And a lot of the kind of struggles that you have involve demons in everyday life who are, represent adults in positions of power where they shouldn't be, corrupt adults in positions of power that need to be brought down and removed their demonic influence. Shin Megami Tensei kind of strips that back, and it just makes it more of a kind of raw you as an ordinary citizen of the world versus the kind of rank evil underneath everything, which is expressed very directly in Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne Remastered in the opening 10 minutes, where I think you are a high school student again, but the world almost immediately ends. And it ends in such a cool and weird way that I instantly had to put another 40 hours into it just to sort of see how it would pan out. You sort of go up to a rooftop and exchange some very strange, have a very strange exchange with a teacher who suggests that she'll see you on the other side. You've just met a guy who looks a lot like Nick Cave in a basement, who's cackling about the end of the world. And he, sort of bids you farewell. But you survive the apocalypse, and you get to see it happen. What happens is you're in the middle of Tokyo, and the entire, all the corners of Tokyo start folding upwards around you. And as lightning strikes everything from a giant orb of energy in the middle, essentially erasing most of humanity, rendering them ghosts who you eventually talk to, and unleashing the demons that were sort of latently present there all along. I was like, it's weird to see it. This is way before Inception or something like that, but just the image of just a city folding in on itself, and that being an apocalypse, and then you're left in this sort of devastated world trying to find some purpose, and you end up kind of moving between different devastated old malls and schools that have become overrun by different factions of demons who want to do different things with the apocalypse. And you know what? This really, really reminded me of what was the detective game that came out last year in the really strange world where there's been a murder and you have to solve the murder mystery. Paradise Killer.
That's the one.
Paradise, yeah. To me, there's no way that people who made Paradise Killer did not play Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne to death, because it feels so similar to me.
Cool.
And that Paradise Killer is also about a series of different kind of almost different godlike forces playing with mortals and using them for their own ends and trying to remake the world in their preferred image. And this game is exactly about that too. And what's kind of really interesting about it is how just addictively bleak it all is. And it's one of the reasons why I think it was originally a PS2 game. The remaster is basically just runs a bit faster, and everything is at a higher resolution. But fundamentally, the way it's been created, like the vacant, samey corridors, is you wouldn't want them to add any detail or change the art style at all from its very basic origins, because it actually captures the sense of an abandoned hospital or an abandoned school or an abandoned mall absolutely perfectly. And it's one of those occasions where, I think the limitations of the original graphics engine has created something that is so evocative and chimes so perfectly with the themes of the thing that it was I think forever stand on its own without any sort of requirement of having to be updated or upgraded or changed in any way.
Nice.
As an RPG, it's also a really good RPG, a really kind of technical, gritty RPG. It's a turn-based party system, but your party members you capture from the enemies that you face. So you can make pact with the demons that you meet in combat, and you often have to pay them and kind of bribe them with items, and then sometimes you have to make it through a conversation and sort of build a rapport with them. it's not that advanced. It's a couple of questions, like get the right answers, and they'll join you. But nonetheless, it creates this brilliant thing where it's if a demon really messes you up, it's like, oh well, that's sad. I'm dead now. I have to restart. But I also want to capture that demon. I want everything that demon can do. And also the demons look flipping weird. Like they look so strange. And people who have played the Persona series probably just kind of like coasted through those games and been like, well, that's a weird looking thing. That looks like a devil riding a giant penis. There's just explicitly a kind of dick chariot monster in the game. And if you go back to Shin Megami Tensei, that's where it all comes from. It's kind of weird that they've actually there's one where there's just a demon on the toilet. And the toilet's just fixed to its bum, and it's sitting there, and it always looks like dejected and sick of everything.
Well, you would be, wouldn't you?
You would be, and he's just kind of resting his chin in his hands. He's just like really, occasionally he'll try and mess you up with a fire spell. And all those designs come from Shin Megami Tensei, and they're actually kind of always reminds me of like Silent Hill 2, where the monster design actually is supposed to represent some sort of sordid or deeply tedious aspect of human experience, visually represent that. And there are some like very typical designs like angels and flying devils and that kind of thing, succubuses, that kind of stuff. But also it's just that super odd stuff. It's like, well, you really did not turn down any monster design that was profit in the creation of this. Not, like whatever the kind of the green lighting process for this, the green light was always on for everything, every sheet of paper that went to decision makers. And I do really like that, because you go to a new area and you just sort of fight what appears to be sort of floating crossword puzzle or something. It's like, okay, I'll have you, thank you very much. And then you get to a conversation with it, and it's like, do you think freedom of man is a curse, really? What do you think about it? And you're like, no, freedom is brilliant. And he's like, yeah, you're right, I'll join you. And I appreciated that exchange. And also now I get to use you in combat. It's got a very detailed weakness system, almost like an elemental weakness system, with a really clever mechanic where if you hit someone's weakness, your team gets a free action. And so you build these chain combos, and you become better at the game by understanding what is strong and what is weak against different elements. It's basically a bit like Pokemon in that respect. In fact, it's a lot like Pokemon structurally, because you are actually capturing these things and leveling them up, and then occasionally fusing them by mashing them spiritually into one entirely new form in an incredibly violent cutscene, which actually, the Persona games have taken that and run with it. Like you literally slot them into guillotines and stuff in Persona. And I wanted to shout it out as kind of something that if you like the sound of any of that, this is the sort of an auto wish list, I think, on Steam.
Yeah.
Just look for it. It'll pop up in the Steam sale, and it's just worth it just to, even if you just play it for like 9 or 10 hours, just experience the weirdness of it and the vibe of it and the strange combat system, the strange creatures that you meet. I've actually stuck with it for longer because I'm very curious about what the different factions actually want to do with humanity and what kind of world they want to create. And I want to, decide who I want to throw my lot in with, which seems to be the ultimate decision in the game. Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne Remastered.
Nice.
It's got a thumbs up from me. It's cool and weird.
That is cool. And I'm so glad that so many of these games are coming to PC now and Steam, particularly, like just the accessibility. I think Shin Megami Tensei 3 is from like 2003 or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, it's really pretty old now. And it's these re-releases, obviously it's a great way for the developers to keep making money out of them, but also it does preserve them. And
yes, yeah.
It's like, I remember, I think it was like early last year or the year before or something, like a really classic anime, Neon Genesis Evangelion, came to Netflix. And I hadn't seen it before, but like a generation of people who tuned into that show, like it's part of the kind of anime canon that they grew up with. But I ended up having like all these conversations with the people who are just discovering it for the first time, and it might as well have been made yesterday. It's so weird. Right. It kind of eats itself in such an interesting, strange, meta way. It felt like its own cultural event just by and it was a re-release. And it's kind of, I love the idea of cultural artifacts that get a new lease of life each time they're released. And obviously, though it's a function of capitalism as well. Obviously, it's a thing that can keep making money forever. But it also has a cultural weight, a different cultural angle each time it resurfaces in a different societal situation. So the things people draw out of Evangelion today will be different from 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And the same is true for Shin Megami Tensei and Persona and a lot of these re-released RPGs, these re-released old games. And they carry with them as well the kind of novelty of old rendering techniques and old kind of low poly technologies and even just old sprites, which leads me to sort of think about the planned pixel re-release of Final Fantasy VI and a lot of the early Final Fantasies, which have been re-released already, but they were run through this horrendous engine that kind of smoothed out all the graphics and ruined all of the kind of personality of the original pixel art. And they're bringing it back, and now they're like, yeah, we're gonna preserve the pixel art you loved. And the first trailer they released was absolutely slammed because the fonts were horrible.
Oh no!
It's just really interesting to see these old art styles kind of resurface and the different reactions that people have to them. Anyway, that was a massive tangent, wasn't it? But yeah,
it's relevant because it's
releases. It's good.
Yeah, I think I understand the desire to play things as they were and the effort that goes into that sort of emulation, but at the same time, I think accessible re-releases of like these games are the ways people may not have encountered, particularly like relatively niche JRPGs from the early noughties, where like not going to be that accessible to anyone who isn't really seeking that stuff out is good. It's a good thing. We've identified a good thing about the year 2021. Hey,
doing well.
That and the scary car game.
What else did we play, Chris? Was that also?
So so the other thing, and so I'm going to blow your mind now by having a hot take about Tetris.
Whoa! Now
I know. I don't have a fucking hot take about Tetris. There's really nothing to be said about it, I guess. But I'm going to do so anyway.
Yeah,
because that's the demands of this medium. So I sort of I think as we've said a few times, like a bit of a sort of different mixed relationship with games nowadays. Like I have really I don't know what it is. I sort of click between escapisms in my life, I think, and my kind of MMO circuit has reduced to nil. Like I haven't touched Destiny in a long time, haven't touched WoW in a long time. And part of that's because of other hobbies, the predictable ones, kind of having, being the thing that focuses my attention, but also just not feeling that compelled by my traditional games orbit. And Chivalry stuck around. I love Chivalry 2 quite a bit. Really, really like it. But I found myself like looking for something to play, like literally, like, which is not a situation you often find yourself in when you got tons of games, right? But like, and I realized, like many people probably do every now and then, oh shit, I pay for Game Pass.
Yes.
I wonder what's on Game Pass. So I tried the new Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance, i.e. the game with the greatest trailer of all time, when someone stuck a GoPro on Drizzt. But then I realized that But then I realized that another game with the greatest trailer of all time, and I mean it this time, was in that set, which is Tetris Effect,
Yes.
which I did not play when it came out on PlayStation in 2018, I think, or 2019. So Tetris Effect is fancy Tetris. Don't know what else to tell you. It's fancy Tetris. But it was announced at, I think, the Sony conference at E3 in 2018 with genuinely the best games trailer I've ever seen. I think it is legitimately flawless. The trailer is simply a short speech about the Tetris effect, which is the observed effect by which Tetris lingers in your brain after you've played it. The way that it kind of sort of imprints itself on your subconscious, and the way that effect is resistant even to things like pathological memory loss. People can forget they've played Tetris and remember Tetris, which is an incredible thing to be true. It's over a very moody, atmospheric, moody pop song as someone plays Tetris against some sort of spectacular, New-Agey sort of, laser dolphin backdrops. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I feel like everyone who's ever played a video game will know what I mean when I say New-Agey laser dolphin backdrop. In space, the nebula. And it's great. The trailer's amazing. And so I was glad to finally get around to playing the game. And I've had a really strange, confounding journey with the game, Tetris. So I feel like I should do the boilerplate stuff. Like, it's a fairly full-featured Tetris game with a new gimmick called, I think, Zone, where you can charge up a bar that lets you stop time. And then for as long as time is stopped, every line that you clear moves to the bottom rather than vanishing immediately. And then all clears at once when time resumes. So what this allows you to do is move beyond a Tetris. It allows you to clear many lines at once. You can get an octatris or a dodecatris or whatever. It's very exciting. That's good. And then the other side of it is it's by the team that did Res Unlimited. So it has that vibe. It has, that sort of. It's funny. I both love this vibe, and the more I see it, the more I appreciate that it is somewhat like a little bit of a kind of a bit tropey in some ways. There's this notion of the journey into the soul via puzzle game that games like to take you on. We're going to journey to the soul, and we're going to journey there from space because that is where the soul is, or is space inside the soul? That's the first of many questions which will be posed by a dolphin. And there'll be a dolphin. There'll be some aquatic imagery probably. At some point, we're going to go on a little tour, a light touch tour of world culture, and the sound effects will change. And I love this stuff, and I also see the sort of the stage management of it now somewhat, and it is very much that. And so each of the stages has new music, new sound effects, new blocks, new visuals, new everything. You can play it in VR for maximum Laser Dolphin Tetris experience. And it is initially a very good mix of Tetris, which is a naturally very meditative experience, so much so that it, as I say, imprints itself in your consciousness, which is what the game is named for. And this imagery, this changing, evolving imagery that is just a pleasant sort of absorbing aesthetic experience. And that initial state, I had a stressful couple of weeks. I found it almost like kind of transportive in a way that I had not found from a game in a while. And I'd never really tried to get good at Tetris in the past. And so that side of things was sort of interest to me. I discovered what felt like a profound thing, which is that it felt profound at the time before I realized how dumb it is. That I think instinctively, I don't want to make a mistake in Tetris. I want to set up my blocks of 4 to clear. And then when I get my big straight line, clear them and do that consistently and never let things get out of control. And you inevitably make mistakes, and that's frustrating. And your rows and your pile of blocks is becoming unmanageable. And then I realized that my favorite experience in Tetris is solving that. And I don't know what that means about me, but it felt profound at the time because I could see a nebula, and that meant the experience I was having was profound. And some nice sort of moody indie pop was singing about connections or something, or about how we are the legends we were born to be, or something like this was happening. And I was like, wow, yeah, maybe I am, but maybe you get there by fixing your mistakes, not by never making a mistake. It was big. But then the thing that happened, the game has some absolutely staggering difficulty spikes, which is a wild thing to happen in a Tetris game about transcending your physical form and following a dolphin into the depths of your own fucking, psychosphere or something. And so I went to this huge 180, and I was like, fuck Tetris. And, how dare you set up this meditative experience and then make me do a test, and this culminated in the last level, which is a fuck you. It's a fuck you because suddenly it's a stage which has a really chill kind of backdrop, but you have to clear 90 lines rather than normal 36 you'd normally be doing on a normal difficulty stage. And the first 30 are quite fast, the second 30 are very slow, and the last 30 are extremely fast. And that is the most frustrating way to design that. Even if you take the principle of clear 90 lines total, they'll be in blocks of 30, and the speed will change. I think pretty much every other version of this is less frustrating than that. There's a version of it where it starts slow and gets faster, at which point you fail at the moment where your own capacity gives out. And you just keep pushing that barrier. You just keep pushing further and further until you finally do it because your skill has improved. There's the version, which I would actually quite like, where it starts fast and then gets slower, almost like the game itself is coming to an end, delivering you to some greater truth. Lets you style on it a bit at the end. You're not going to finish when you desperately fucking shoehorn a block somewhere it's probably not supposed to go to get that final line to barely survive the level. You're going to finish clean. It's going to feel good. It's going to be clarifying. It's going to make you feel like you've been inducted into something, and that you probably owe somebody money now. That's the feeling that you would get. What they do instead is this thing where you do the first 30, and if you fuck up there, you're like, shit, well, fuck it, I'll try again. Then you get to the second 30 where you'll almost never fail, but it'll take ages because the lines are slow. And then you get to the final 30 where you'll always fail if you're me. and you'll be like, fuck this, and you also not really want to do the first two stages again because they're variously a bit hard and boring. And so I genuinely had this like, well, fuck this then. I'm not talking about it on the podcast. And then I kept playing it because there's a thing about Tetris, which is it's Tetris. And I eventually, I knocked the difficulty down initially to get through it. And then I was like, I've got to play me some more Tetris, a lot more Tetris. So I started playing online Tetris. I got into the battle mode. I then downloaded Tetris 99 for the Switch, which is Tetris Battle Royale. And now, and like today I was like, you know what, I'm going to go back to the campaign, which I was so kind of maligned, which has other modes and all the rest of it. And I'm going to play it on hard. And I was like, fucking smashing it. And I was like, fuck you, Tetris. You taught me to play Tetris, you monster. That was the truth lurking at the bottom of this kind of spiritual journey. It wasn't me. I wasn't there. My relationship with error wasn't the great truth I was going to derive from this. My sense of what you can do with an L-shaped block in an emergency is what was going to emerge from this. And it did. I had a great time. And honestly, but I've been angry for most of it.
Tetris is a brutal game. Tetris 2020 World Championship. The final was a hotly contested showdown between two brothers, 115 and 113, which you can sort of see like the household escalation that happened between those two.
Yeah, exactly.
To reach this stage. The sheer force of brotherly competition has led them both to see off all comers. I can't remember which one won, but thank you for the excellent podcast. No Such Thing as a Fish from the QI people who had a whole section on Tetris, and it was absolutely fascinating.
Someone I used to do improv comedy does that podcast.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
oh, is
Andy.
that Hunter Murray? Oh, he's great. He does the Private Eyes podcast as well. Also very good. Good podcasts.
Small world.
Cool world. Tetris.
Tetris
facts all the way
and
down.
Now we've made that line, I'll vanish. But oh no, I was angled weirdly. Only my head remains, and it can keep talking. I'm an L-shaped block, I guess. What kind of block are you?
Probably that straight line one, but sideways.
just planking.
Just planking all the way down. That's me.
Yeah, just planking. Did
you find the effects in Tetris Effect to be distracting at all from the Tetris itself?
Yes, but initially I confused that for the point.
Yeah, I think I went through the same journey. Because I've read people who are saying it was kind of almost a transcendent experience, and I think it could be if it weren't for the fundamental irritation at the heart of Tetris, which is that it's a game about tidying up, and if you mess up a kind of lines lower down, it's going to be messed up for a long time, and it's going to be staring you in the face with its irregularity and wrongness. And I always find that infuriating, and no amount of neon dolphins could fix that for me, Chris.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's like sitting down, lighting a candle, meditating, and then, I don't know, reorganizing your company's Kanban board or something, right? Like, and then because you're like, I can't solve this. Why is that there? I can solve this, and then you sort of you feel stressed out, and you don't know what you came into this experience expecting, but it wasn't this.
And then you lose.
Yeah, and
it goes at twice the speed because the sound
exactly
speeds up.
Yeah, it's funny going from Tetris Effect to Tetris 99, which is much more of a classic Tetris game. Obviously, without the battle royale twist is really fun actually as a kind of way of playing Tetris. But it's in other regards it's classic Tetris, including the music. And like I know that the classic music does show up in Tetris Effect, but it almost feels like they stepped away from it. That kind of just the madness of that music, and I feel like what they achieved is like, man, this experience has some real dignity. There's some meaning here. I don't know what it is, but the lady singing has convinced me that I'm having a transcendent experience. And then you go back to the regular music, and it's like, no, this is what it actually sounds like in my head. Each of them a scream. Of, is this an optimal decision? I will never know. Fuck.
Can you make
the actual sound of Tetris?
Can you make the failure noise the game makes on the original Game Boy?
I don't know if I can.
It's
like an electric tiger.
Yeah, it's
I feel like this is that sort of school of game, like post-res puzzle transcendence, feels like it's really open to parody, and no one's done it yet. I feel like a Tetris Effect parody is kind of waiting to happen. right? Where you're really deep into the fucking sky ocean of your mind, and like the dolphin just fucking swims off with your line block you wanted. And you're like, fuck, I want it to come back. And it just like flips you off and like swims off into the sky and explodes or something. I'd play that game. I want the game with this where it gets weird, you know?
Should be
rather than me
Salvia
disappointing
edition,
myself.
where you go in expecting transcendence, and then suddenly it's 4 a.m. and you're vomiting all over yourself, chewing on a root in a hut.
Exactly.
Why? What did I think I would achieve?
Right, because it's like there's such an overlap with like it wants to be a trip, right? That's what it wants to be.
Yeah,
that's what it wants to be, and it's like it is a trip, and it's a trip where halfway through the trip, someone's like, your tax return's due in like an hour, and you're like, fuck, and like, and you're like, what did I make? I don't know. Just like, but it is. I was going to say, like, it's nice that it's on Game Pass, and there's like, I'm glad that that's kind of the venue in which I played it, right? It's like I forgot I was paying for this, and so if I've got this game and I can just try it, and that was actually a really nice experience. So on balance, I forgive it, I guess.
I think it came out with like full price recent consoles. I think.
Yeah,
it's like £40. It's a lot for Tetris. No matter how many dolphins you've got in there, it's a lot. I think.
It is fancy Tetris though. It's boutique,
super fancy.
It's boutique
artisanal.
Tetris. It is artisanal hipster Tetris like that, and that's a powerful pitch, right? It's like you're trying to teach yourself chess and you buy yourself the nice chessboard.
Yeah, I've been there and done that.
Me too. It's natural. It's human to desire the fancy thing. But yes, I don't beyond that have any comments on the design of the game Tetris.
Send us your thoughts.
Indeed.
On the meditative aspects of Tetris or the infuriating aspects of it. It is amazing that there is something about the sorting those patterns into a box that is just deeply satisfying to the human brain on a level beyond language. And that is just obviously that's a genuine thing. Tetris Effect is real.
I had a really good moment of that where I felt like I had gotten past it because I was like, I've been playing this a lot and I don't really get this anymore. Like I'm not haunted by the game anymore. It hasn't cursed me because it did. Like it really got in my head. And then I lay down in bed, and our bed is sort of it's like many beds in a room. And it's got like the headboard to the wall and then like narrow space either side. And I immediately just thought, I'm going to need 2 straight to clear this.
No. I need 2 Chris's, 1 bent at a right angle.
Exactly. I need one. It's like I'm going to have to wait for 2.
I need a perfectly square Chris.
Exactly.
That's all I need.
Yeah. And then I was like, oh, fuck. And then I dreamed about it all night again.
Yeah.
So it's been a weird week, but that's been the nature of it.
Good times.
Seems like a suspiciously good time to do questions, doesn't it?
Agreed.
Yeah. Shall we?
Let's do it.
First question is actually a comment, but I'll read it out anyway. First email comes from friend of pod and friend of me, Paul Canavan, who writes, hi friends, I very much enjoyed Alex and Graham's musing about Quake mapping and the impact of modern game engines on solo devs. I feel like I should read it in his voice, but I won't. As a game art man and professional engine poker, I thought I'd weigh in on the topic. Game engines are really good now, he screams. Honestly, making games is far more approachable than it ever was. I grew up mapping for Quake, Half-Life, and Unreal, and couldn't wrap my head around the 3D software of the time. It was outrageously expensive and complicated. Nowadays, we have Blender, Unreal, Unity, and so many other high-end production packages available with free tiers. And thanks to the ludicrous amount of educational content available on YouTube, the barrier to entry is super low. To your point regarding technological constraints versus creativity, modern tech is actually making a lot of stuff easier. Ray tracing is a great example. Game engines essentially cheat a lot of stuff, and real-time lighting is super expensive. Ray tracing will enable us to light levels in a much more realistic way without having to place hundreds of tiny lights everywhere. It should be a huge time saver, and is a lot more intuitive. Love the pod as always. Fangs are glistening. Paul, noted ray tracing enthusiast. I appreciate neither you or I think we're on the pod where Graham and I discussed this, but it's I think the democratization of these tools and technologies is super cool, actually, generally speaking. And I'm glad we're at a point where tech creep is raising the floor as well as the ceiling, as you know, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of ray tracing as a consumer now. The new PC stuff. Doom Eternal's just had an update that puts in loads of modern effects, and it just looks so good.
Oh, I should go back to that.
Yeah, it looks beautiful. It runs on I think it has DLSS, which is kind of like an anti-aliasing solution, utilizing deep learning or something. But yeah, it just means the game runs incredibly fast as well as looking just ridiculous.
I say this dangerously now that I work in game dev. I love not knowing what the fuck any of this stuff means or how it works anymore. Like, I feel like there was a point when I kind of understood what was going on with graphics engines and so on. Not on a technical level, obviously, I'm not smart, but from a kind of like consumer standpoint, I sort of knew what different buttons would do. And now that I'm in a very fortunate position of having, as you are now, like a powerful PC that will do most things, I just switch them on and I'm happy about that. You know what I mean? Like, as far as I understand it, they have invented an AI that knows what things should be smooth.
That's the pitch as far as I understand it. And that's all I need to know.
Exactly.
On the consumer end to enjoy this.
So it just sort of algorithmically understands something about humanity, which is what needs to be soft. The gentlest robot. Yeah, exactly.
Control is great as well with all that stuff. Like, Control is lovely anyway. I just love the way that game looks. Oh yeah, there's, I don't know if we discussed the news that there's more Control stuff coming from that universe.
Cool.
Game. And
I don't think we did.
There's a bigger in-depth single player thing.
Nice.
Which I'm super happy about both of those, because that is a universe that I really want to spend more time in, to the extent that I think I'm on my third playthrough of Control. There's something about that game that I really need.
Yeah, it's very compelling.
It is.
It's stuck with me as well, though I haven't returned to it. Yeah, definitely. I still think it was a bad name for a game, but
hard to Google.
Yeah, hard to Google, but nice to play. And really, is that not what matters? The smoothing robot would say yes. Sean writes, assembled company, what is your favorite sound in video games? Failing that, your least favorite sound. Personally, I love the mip merp sound Dota makes when you try to attack a fortified tower. Happy honking, Sean. I hope that was a decent impression. I think that mip merp is actually taken from Half-Life. I think it's one of those Source Engine sounds that kind of left in the game as kind of just a joke. Because I think it's one of the variant, like, you can't beep that noises from Half-Life.
Yeah, I think I really like the sounds of eating in games. Often it's one of the, it's weird because, like, obviously sound of people eating in real life not so great. I've just take it or leave it. But video games, when it's like a sound engineer has really kind of paid a lot of attention to it and really kind of beefed up the crunchier, satisfying aspects of someone like just really determinedly biting through an apple or something. That's always just a lovely sound. I like that.
Something I love about working on a creative side of a game with a sound designer who's also a very committed Foley person is sometimes I can just say something in a meeting and, like, 2 days later, a Canadian man is punching some dog food. And there's like a direct, like, connection between those two events. And that's wonderful. I like that a lot. As to specific connections, man, it's one of those questions where, like, I always think about, whenever we get asked, like, what's your favorite thing ever, or your least favorite thing ever, I just think about the recent thing, right? Like, I find it so hard to kind of pull out, like, a sound effect of all time. I will say, actually, it's because I was reminded of it today. Deathloop has a very similar blink to Dishonored.
It does.
But the noise, all of the sound design of Dishonored's blink, from the kind of, like, sort of ethereal sound of it being held to the shoop of it kind of being activated, is delicious. I like, as in, I would eat that sound effect if it had flavor. I think it would be minty and chocolatey, therefore an arrow. Exactly. I really like. I'm trying to think. Oh, it's not a sound effect. There's a map in Chivalry 2 where Chivalry 2 has so many fun different modes in its maps, but one of them begins with one team ransacking a field full of peasants who are played by the members of the other team, who are prevented just for that moment until they die from playing as their actual kitted out characters. They have to play shitty peasants with pitchforks and stuff, and it's very funny. And there's a chance, it doesn't always trigger, but at the beginning of that map, they have these, like, cinematic kind of pans at the beginning. The beginning of the map, it pans from the village to the field and up to the army approaching over the hill. And as it finally finishes its pitch, one of the peasants turns to another one and says, "Thanks for nothing, Jeffrey," and slaps him in the face. It doesn't always happen, but it's genuinely one of my favorite, stupidest details. That in anything, really, I love it to death. It's not really a sound, well, I guess it is a sound effect, but wonderful. Loved it very much.
Love good troop box. And also, I love the sound of, I think this might be a Battlefield noise, or it might be in one of Tripwire's games, like Red Orchestra. It's the sound of just a shell casing coming out of a single shot rifle and the swing noise that kind of spits off out into, out of view.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, actually,
type of noise. Really nice.
The Battlefield tank cannon crunch.
It's a good one. Yeah. Any game, most games nail the lightsabers, I would say, noise wise. So I really like the sound of the lightsaber in Fallen Order as well. Another game I keep playing over and over again.
Yeah, I like. It's an obvious one, but almost all the Quake sounds. I think we've done that bit before, but they're very evocative to me. The tinniness of a Half-Life grenade lobbed across an open room. We know,
almost poetic.
Yeah, exactly. The way that Half-Life's explosions had this sort of slightly metallic edge to them, there's I will never accurately describe a sound. There's a certain they're not very earthy, right? They're not very bass heavy. There's a lot of they're quite tinny in a way, both in the sense of they're being quite high pitched, and also the sort of strange resonant sort of wang to them, I guess. There's a sort of
cold robotic wang.
It's that's very, very pinned in my brain. A lot of Half-Life sounds, I think it's because it's such a formative 3D game for me, one of those first kind of immersive worlds. The sort of sound that the drones in City 17 make when they photograph you, that's another classic.
That's a good one. Any sounds that really, really annoying. I can think of I feel bad about actually that one, because often it's in really small indie games where the footsteps are really annoying or something like that.
Yeah,
it's persistent that you have to live with. But I can't think of a specific one to actually call out.
No, I don't think I can think of a least favorite to call out. No, I don't think I have a. Yeah, I don't think I have a dunk.
Sound designers everywhere.
Yeah, yes, they are absolute heroes. And I sometimes one of those things I'm really happy to appreciate in games, right? Just it's when done well, it's so good. Next question comes from Brian, who writes, "Greetings, fellow olds. Regarding your discussion in episode 373 about getting older and your changing relationship with games, I was wondering, do you know what the demographic is for C&C? I'm 37 with 2 young children and very much agree with Chris and Tom S. about their gaming habits these days. Following on a similar thread, do you guys ever go back and explore old games you may have missed? Alex is having a good time with his Mister, or at least he has been traditionally. Does anyone else also go back to their earlier days? These days I often find myself playing old games I missed, or even something I played before. I've turned into my parents watching 1950s TV shows, except I play games from the 90s and noughties. Also, being that I'm a crotchety old man now, I'd love to hear from you guys. I'd love to hear you guys talk about older games more often. Thanks, Brian. Well, you're in luck, Brian. Have you heard of Tetris?
I really enjoy going back to old games. Really, really enjoy it. And yeah, I'd love to go back to even just adventure games I've solved before. I'll go back to it. I was really delighted when Grim Fandango was re-released. And just the nostalgia of kind of walking through those Mexican Day of the Dead in the initial kind of the initial scenes, and then I think it goes a bit pants towards the end, and then this is always a bit where I just stop. There's one particular puzzle where I just stop, and just I was good. I get exactly the same hit of fun from that game every single time I play it, which is really, really nice. Guaranteed
nice.
Fun.
Yeah, I tend not to Tetris, obviously. But I think the way my relationship with games has changed is more in the sense of actually wanting novelty. I want to see the new things that people are excited about, and my favorite experiences the last couple of years have always been things that are new, basically. I haven't even gone back to the Mass Effect Remaster or something like that. I feel like my time now is I'm playing a little bit less, and so I want the experience that I have to be things I haven't done before. Which not to say the temptation isn't there. I downloaded Civ the other day, again because it was on Game Pass, because like it had that compulsion. That's maybe what I wanted or needed in that moment. So I'm not ruling it out by any means. It's just that my habit, if I'm like, what do I play? My habit is never to go, oh, you know what, I miss this game. You know, I miss BioShock, or I miss Dishonored, or some other game that I've, you know, previously been into. So the answer is, simply put, is kind of no at the moment. But that's not to say that I can't discover something that's pretty old and then just have a new relationship with it. Like, you know, even Beware, which, you know, I've missed by a couple of years, but I'm only just now discovering.
It is a gamble, though. Like, it's sad to come back to something that you have such great memories of and then find it's just like too old now. That's true.
Yeah.
Like, the first Unreal game is one which I got really obsessed with when it first came out, and like Unreal Tournament 2004. I think Unreal Tournament is still great, but like the original single player campaign, which was completely mind blowing at the time. It's like, whoa, colored lighting, and there's this sort of narrative sequence at the very start of the game that kind of funnels you through an abandoned facility. As there's lots of kind of like horror movie tropes as you go through there, of like shadows darting across doorways and that kind of stuff that really you didn't get much of in games. Then you go back to it now, and it spits you out into this wide open area, and it's just like, oh, this looks rubbish. This is all just rubbish. I hate it. So yeah, it's better to live with the nostalgia sometimes. But I think some classic games, particularly strategy games and stuff, do really hold up. The old Total Wars really hold up. Rome still holds up pretty well, for example.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you can probably expect us to talk about older games more often, because we just talk about whatever it is that we happen to have been interested in now.
Yeah.
But I think, my excitement at the moment is definitely for new things on the horizon. Speaking of time, our final question comes from a radical time warlock, would you believe it? And you shouldn't, it's probably a lie, who writes, Dear Cream and Crumpet, you have been cursed by a radical time warlock.
Oh no.
That's the correct response. For the rest of eternity, you can only play video games that were released in one specific year. Because the warlock is cool, you get to choose the year. Which year of release do you choose to play games from? ? Regards, a radical time warlock.
I think it's going to be hard to beat 1997. So Quake 2, pretty good. What else have we got in 1997? We've got Dungeon Keeper. That's pretty great. I love that game. Gran Turismo, also awesome. Broken Sword 2, really good adventure game. Doom 64. Tomb Raider 2, Jedi Knight. Oddworld Apes Odyssey. Age of Empires, Final Fantasy 7. It's ridiculous. It's just a ridiculous for so many different genres.
Again, I think for me the obvious answer is 2007, which would get you Team Fortress 2, Super Mario Galaxy, BioShock, Halo 3, Portal, COD 4, The Witcher, Crysis, Peggle, The Orange Box, Mass Effect, and the first Uncharted, I think, or one of them, the final Half-Life episode, Stalker, that's the first Assassin's Creed. Like the first WoW expansion, Unreal Tournament 3, like Rock Band.
Damn, I played all of those games today.
Exactly. Supreme Commander Forged Alliance. That is a year you could live in, I think.
That's
and like, I appreciate that. Like, I feel like every, it's, I did, I picked a year that was also very kind of formative for me in games as well. Cause like that was the year I got an Xbox, and that was a hell of a year to suddenly get back into games. Right. Mm. Like it was a year that was the year I got back into games actually after a bit of an absence, and like, dang, what a time. Peggle. Did I say Peggle already?
You said Peggle, but it's worth a second mention.
Yeah, it is.
Game's a classic.
Yeah, and like, and I part of me is a little bit resistant to kind of go like, remember, 15 years ago, whatever it is now, 14 years ago. But fuck me, that's in hindsight a really good lineup.
I mean, the Orange Box is ridiculous, wasn't it?
Like,
like everyone was like, oh, it was wildly, obviously just 3 incredible games, and it was wildly lauded at the time. Even by today's standards, that's such a varied collection of awesome games.
Yeah,
It really is. I mean, obviously that's taking a fairly mainstream take on this, and I imagine there's a cool answer lurking here somewhere, but I'm not going to be the one who says it.
No. Same here. 2001, if you for console games, is brilliant. That was Grand Theft Auto 3, Halo, Silent Hill 2, Metal Gear Solid 2, Super Smash Bros. Melee, Tony Hawk's 3, SSX Tricky, Max Payne. That's another ridiculous year, Devil May Cry.
That is ridiculous.
Yeah. Sometimes the release schedule is just brilliant. Return to Castle Wolfenstein, which has I don't think it's a great game at all, but for some reason I find it really funny.
I have a huge fondness for Return to Castle Wolfenstein. I can't remember if it was good or not. But I have a huge fondness for it.
That is
I think the multiplayer was legitimately good.
The multiplayer was cool. That was just kind of Quake Wars style. It was kind of
it was proto splash damage, right?
Yeah, right.
It may even have literally been splash damage. I can't remember exactly where that all lines up. Yeah, totally. Man, time, eh?
Two Daughters of Destruction.
Oh fuck! I said I wouldn't say that at the beginning of the podcast, and I've done it.
What time, eh?
Yeah, exactly. One of my recurring, like that, and Tetris blocks falling around me at all times, and my two recurring brain worms. Apart from the seagull, I'm literally haunted by and now cursed by.
Do you have one of those kind of bathroom cupboards above the sink with a mirror on it, where you can open it and fetch something, then close it, and have the seagull be right behind you?
I don't, unfortunately.
So this to look out for.
But our bathroom has like a mirror above the sink, and then the other wall is basically a whole mirror. So what I can do is I can look up and see my reflection in the mirror behind me, like the double reflection. And maybe in that reflection, I am a seagull. Like,
yeah,
or a car.
It's it's always important to map out the jump scares that could happen in the abode you're in at a time.
Right. Well, where else are they going to happen? To go anywhere else?
Exactly right.
Yeah, exactly.
Silhouette in a thunderstorm, flash of lightning.
Seagull. Exactly.
I got into trouble on Twitter once. It's as close as I've ever been to being cancelled. Is when I was celebrating the fact you could throw Kratos' homing axe at seagulls in the new God of War, and there's a bespoke animation for them exploding when you hit them, and possibly an achievement for it. And then someone got in touch on Twitter. It's like, actually, they're really lovely animals, and they're forced to migrate inland every year because of humanity.
Actually, like, Kratos only does this when he's very distressed.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's got a good reason. It's got a good reason. I don't know what seagulls' migratory habits are like in Valheim or wherever he is.
I'm positive that that act that you took had no impact on a seagull in real life.
No, but that person made me aware of the plight of seagulls. So I know I've mentioned it on the podcast. So it's a good piece of activism there on behalf of the seagull population.
Yeah, exactly. The reason I knew that there's a juvenile seagull, although there certainly has been a few roofs down, is because one of them like fledged the nest and it's basically been terrorizing the road, or last couple of weeks ago was terrorizing the road as it learned to fly. It's some strange combination of adopted by everyone on the street and feared, because you go anywhere near this shouting little proto-dinosaur fluff monster, its parents will dive bomb you. And so, and it's like, we don't really have anything, we can't really do anything about this now. We just need to kind of accept that this screaming little monster is going to kind of live here until it learns how to fly and just goes off to steal chips for the rest of its life.
It's nice though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But like, I think I've seen a seagull trying to eat an entire dead pigeon. So like, there's like,
that's the thing they did.
They can, they can really go. They are like. I also saw a seagull eat a live sparrow once.
What?
Hunting, like, just, it was horrendous. I was walking with Pip at the time, and having a conversation about something relatively serious, and I could see this happening, and I just realized I had to kind of like put myself physically between Pip and this, because it's like, we don't need this additional layer of stress. Like this strange, like Jurassic Park scenario that's playing on the other side of the road as two sparrows fly for their life from a seagull that is determined to eat them and then did. Like, horrendous. So, moderate. Like, what I'm saying is, I don't feel bad for telling that seagull to piss off. If only on behalf of that sparrow.
Fair.
I don't know how I got onto this.
No, that's horrifying. That image will haunt me.
Yeah, as it should. Well, every bin and bath has in several languages, please don't feed the seagulls. But
Yeah,
maybe
too
if
late
we
though,
had
isn't it?
just fed the seagulls, that sparrow wouldn't have been murdered.
I think they'd have still done it anyway. I think there's cruelty at the heart of that species.
Yeah, exactly. I heard it the other day. I was eating a BLT in the park because I know how to live, and a seagull came over to me and just stood perfectly still and did that thing where it folds one of its legs up in its body, and they look very strange. And you get to look at them, realize just how uncanny birds can be sometimes. So this is like a stick with a football mounted on it, with a staring eye and a knife for a face. And it's just looking at me. And I ate the entire BLT. Then I finished my crisps. And then I wrapped up the packet and put them in my bag until I could get to a bin. Started drinking my Coke. And I think it knew at that point there was going to be no crumbs and no packet to run off with. And it just very slowly descended one of its other legs to the ground and just walked away like a person. I was like, okay, all right, I see.
Something going on with those. Something going on with those seagulls in Bath.
Apparently. That is all the questions that we have, incidentally. My least favourite game sound, the noise that seagull made at the start of this podcast. There you go. If you'd like to send us a question for a future episode of the podcast, you can email us the questions at crateandcrowbar.com. You can tweet us at crateandcrowbar. You can find the podcast and others like it on YouTube at youtube.com/crateandcrowbar. We have a Discord server linked in our website at crateandcrowbar.com, where you'll find many other things to do with the podcast, as only logically follows. Thanks as ever to all of our Patreon supporters who allow us to do this through their benevolence. You can find out more about supporting the podcast at patreon.com/crateandcrowbar. I think that was relatively smooth. All that remains to say is that I have been Chris Thurston and that you have been
Tom Senior.
Lovely.
Huh.
Well then.
Thanks
for listening, everybody.
Bye.
Nice, smooth.
Thank you.
Smooth. The algorithm got to you.
Got to me, and I love it.